The wind carried the scent of sage and something else, something that made the horses nervous. Elijah Cade dismounted slowly, his knees protesting after 3 weeks in the saddle. At 42, the trail didn't forgive a man the way it used to. He crouched beside the cold campfire, running his fingers through the ashes. 2 days old, maybe 3. She was moving faster than he'd expected. Most people fleeing justice got sloppy when they thought they'd found safety. Not this one. The wanted poster in his saddlebag said her name was Clara Whitmore, 28 years old, brown hair, green eyes, wanted for the murder of Cornelius Ashford, one of the richest men in Denver. The reward was $5,000, dead or alive, enough to buy that ranch in Montana he'd been dreaming about since the war ended. Elijah mounted up and followed the trail northwest, toward the Bighorn Mountains. The woman was smart. She'd avoided every town, every trading post, every place where someone might recognize her face from the posters that Ashford's family had plastered across 3 territories. But Elijah Cade was smarter. He'd been tracking men and women for 15 years. He'd never lost a bounty yet, and he wasn't about to start now. The sun was setting when he spotted the cabin. It sat in a small valley, protected from the wind by a ring of cottonwoods. Smoke curled from the chimney. A small garden grew beside the house, and he could see chickens pecking in a fenced yard. It looked peaceful, permanent. Elijah pulled out his spyglass and studied the scene. A woman emerged from the cabin carrying a bucket. Brown hair pulled back in a practical braid. Even at this distance, he could see the set of her shoulders, the way she carried herself like someone who expected trouble. Clara Whitmore. He'd found her. But something made him hesitate. As he watched, a small figure burst through the cabin door and ran to the woman, wrapping arms around her legs. Then another, and another. 4 children in all, ranging from what looked like about 4 years old to maybe 10. Elijah lowered the spyglass and frowned. The poster hadn't mentioned children. He made camp a mile away, where the terrain would hide his fire from the valley below. As he chewed on jerky and watched the stars emerge, he thought about the job ahead. Children complicated things. They always did. But the law was the law, and Clara Whitmore had killed a man. Whatever her reasons, she had to answer for it. That wasn't his business. His business was bringing her in, dead or alive. He thought about the $5,000, thought about the ranch in Montana, the quiet life he'd promised himself after so many years of blood and dust. He could almost smell the pine trees, feel the cold mountain streams between his fingers. In the morning, he would ride down to that cabin and do what he came to do. Dawn came cold and gray. Elijah checked his Colt, then his Winchester. Both were clean, oiled, ready. He'd done this 100 times. There was no reason this should be any different. He approached the cabin from the east, keeping the rising sun at his back. The element of surprise was everything in this work. Get the drop on them before they could think, before they could fight. Most people surrendered when they saw the business end of a rifle. Most people. He was 50 yards from the cabin when the door opened and Clara Whitmore stepped onto the porch. She was holding a shotgun, and she had it pointed right at his chest. "That's far enough, mister." Elijah reined in his horse. In the early light, he could see her clearly now. The poster hadn't done her justice. Not in capturing the fierce intelligence in her green eyes, or the way she held that shotgun like she knew exactly how to use it. "Ma'am," he said carefully, keeping his hands visible on the saddle horn, "I'm not looking for trouble." "Then you picked the wrong valley to ride into." Her voice was steady. "I know who you are, bounty hunter. I've seen your type before." "Then you know I'm not leaving without what I came for." "And what's that?" "You, ma'am. You're wanted for murder in Denver, $5,000, dead or alive." Something flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe. or anger. I didn't murder anyone. I defended myself. That's not what the law says. The law belongs to men like Cornelius Ashford, men with money and power and no conscience. She adjusted her grip on the shotgun. He tried to force himself on me. When I fought back, he hit me, kept hitting me. I grabbed the first thing I could find, a letter opener on his desk, and I stuck it in his throat. It was him or me, mister. I chose me. Elijah had heard every story in the book. Every murderer had a reason, a justification, a tale of woe that was supposed to make their crime understandable. After 15 years, he'd learned not to listen. But something about the way she told it, the flat, matter-of-fact delivery, the absence of tears or pleading, made him pause. That may be true, ma'am. But I'm still taking you in. No, you're not. That shotgun won't stop me. Even if you kill me, they'll send others. Men who won't hesitate. Men who won't talk first. I know. She lowered the shotgun slightly. Not surrendering, just adjusting her stance. But I can't go with you. Not yet. Not until I know the children are safe. The children? Come inside, Mr. Bounty Hunter. See what you're really threatening. Then decide if your $5,000 is worth their lives. Elijah didn't trust her. He didn't trust anyone. But there was something in her voice, a weariness that went deeper than fear, that made him dismount and follow her into the cabin. The inside was simple, but clean. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall, with a fire burning low. A rough-hewn table sat in the center of the room, surrounded by mismatched chairs. And gathered around that table, watching him with wide, frightened eyes, were 4 children. The oldest was a girl of about 10, with dark hair and a defiant set to her jaw. She stood protectively in front of the others. A boy of about 8, a girl of about 6, and a small boy no older than 4 who clutched a ragged stuffed rabbit to his chest. These are the Hammond children, Clara said quietly. Their parents were killed by Comancheros 6 months ago, on the trail from Texas. I found them wandering in the desert, half dead from thirst and exposure. I brought them here. You brought them here to hide from the law. I brought them here because there was nowhere else to go. She set the shotgun against the wall, a gesture of trust, or perhaps of exhaustion. The nearest town is 40 miles away. The nearest orphanage is in Cheyenne. 200 miles. I couldn't leave them, and I couldn't take them with me while I was running. Elijah looked at the children. The oldest girl, he would learn her name was Sarah, met his gaze without flinching, the others huddled behind her. Why should I believe you? You shouldn't. Clara moved to the stove, where a pot of something that smelled like rabbit stew simmered. Believe what you want. But before you drag me to Denver in chains, ask yourself this. What happens to these children when I'm gone? He had no answer for that. He stayed. He told himself it was tactical. He needed to assess the situation, determine if her story was true, plan his next move. He told himself he was still going to bring her in. Just not today, tomorrow, or the day after. But as the days passed, something changed. He watched Clara with the children. Watched her bandage Thomas's knee when he fell climbing a tree. Watched her teach Sarah to read from an old Bible, the only book in the cabin. Watched her hold little Emma when she woke screaming from nightmares about the men who killed her parents. Watched her carry Michael on her hip while she worked the garden, singing old songs in a voice that was rough but gentle. She wasn't their mother. She was something more. A woman who had taken 4 broken, terrified children and given them something to hold on to. Safety, routine, love. And she had done it while running for her life. On the 3rd night, after the children were asleep, Elijah sat with Clara on the porch, watching the stars. Why didn't you leave them? He asked. You could have moved faster alone, gone to California maybe, started over somewhere no one would find you. Clara was quiet for a long moment. I thought about it. Every day for the first month, I thought about it. She pulled her shawl tighter against the cold. But I couldn't. I looked at those children, and I saw myself. What do you mean? I was an orphan, too, left on the steps of a church in St. Louis when I was 3 years old. The nuns raised me, if you can call it that. Raised me to cook, clean, serve. Raised me to be grateful for scraps and silence. Her voice hardened. When I was 16, they sold me to Cornelius Ashford. Oh, they didn't call it that. They called it a position in a respectable household. But I knew what it was. Elijah said nothing. There was nothing to say. I was his property for 12 years. 12 years of being invisible. 12 years of pretending I didn't see the other girls who came and went. The ones who ended up in the river, or the ones who just disappeared. She turned to face him, and in the moonlight her eyes were hard as jade. When he finally came for me, when he decided I was too old and too troublesome and needed to be replaced, I killed him. And I would do it again. Clara, those children didn't have anyone to fight for them. Their parents are dead. Their relatives, if they have any, are 2,000 miles away in Texas. If I leave them, if you take me away, they'll die. Maybe not right away. Maybe they'll starve first, or freeze when winter comes. Maybe someone else will find them. Someone who won't see children, just opportunities. Her voice broke just for a moment. I can't let that happen. I won't. Elijah stood up abruptly and walked to the edge of the porch. His hands were shaking. He thought about the $5,000. Thought about the ranch in Montana. Thought about 15 years of doing the job, never asking questions, never getting involved. And then he thought about 4 children who had no one in the world except a wanted woman with a shotgun and a will of iron. I won't take you in, he said. Not yet. Not until we figure out what to do with them. Clara didn't thank him. She just nodded, as if she had known all along that this was how it would end. Maybe she had. The next morning, Elijah began teaching Sarah to shoot. She was a natural, steady hands, sharp eyes, the patience to wait for the right moment. She reminded him of himself at that age, growing up on his father's farm in Kentucky before the war came and destroyed everything. You're a bounty hunter, she said, as they walked back to the cabin after the lesson. It wasn't a question. I was. Does that mean you hunt people? It means I find people who are running from the law and bring them back to face justice. Is Clara running from the law? Elijah hesitated. He had learned quickly that Sarah was too smart to lie to. Yes. Did she do something bad? She killed a man. Sarah absorbed this information without flinching. At 10 years old, she had already seen too much death to be shocked by it. Did he deserve it? I think so. Yes. Then why would you bring her back? He had no answer for that either. 2 weeks passed. Elijah fell into the rhythm of the cabin, chopping wood, hunting game, mending fences. He told himself he was waiting for the right opportunity to leave, to figure out what to do about Clara and the children. But the truth was simpler. For the first time in 15 years, he had stopped running. The children accepted him slowly, the way wild animals learn to trust. Thomas started following him around, asking questions about guns and horses and the places Elijah had been. Emma showed him her collection of interesting rocks. Even Michael, the youngest and most skittish, eventually allowed Elijah to carry him on his shoulders. And Clara. He tried not to think about Clara, about the way she laughed when the children played, rare and bright as sunlight, about the steel in her spine and the gentleness in her hands, about the way she looked at him sometimes, as if she was trying to figure out a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. He was falling in love with her. He knew it, and he hated himself for it. This wasn't his life. These weren't his people. He was a bounty hunter, a man who lived alone, trusted no one, and answered to nothing but the weight of gold in his saddlebag. But when he looked at Clara, he saw something he thought he'd lost long ago. He saw a future. The rider appeared on the 15th day. Elijah spotted him from the ridge where he'd been hunting, a single man on a black horse, moving deliberately toward the valley. Not searching, coming. Like he knew exactly where he was going. Elijah recognized the way he sat his horse. The easy confidence, the careful attention to his surroundings. This was a professional, another bounty hunter. He was back at the cabin in minutes. "We've got company," he told Clara. "One rider, headed this way." Clara's face went pale, but she didn't panic. "How long?" "An hour, maybe less." She nodded once, then turned to the children. "Sarah, take the others to the root cellar. You remember what I taught you?" "Yes, ma'am. Be quiet. Don't come out until you or Mr. Elijah calls for us." "Good girl. Go now." Sarah gathered the younger children with an efficiency that broke Elijah's heart. They had done this before, he realized. They knew the drill. They knew that someday, someone would come. When the children were hidden, Clara retrieved her shotgun. "I'll handle this," Elijah said. "No. Clara, this is my fight, not yours. You've done enough." "Enough?" He caught her arm, forcing her to look at him. "You think I'm going to stand aside and watch you face him alone? I think you're still deciding whether to turn me in yourself. I won't blame you if you do. That money could change your life. My life changed the day I rode into this valley. The money doesn't matter anymore." She searched his face, looking for the lie. He knew she wouldn't find it. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you throw away everything you've worked for?" "Because some things are worth more than $5,000. He took the shotgun from her hands and set it aside. "Because those children need you, and because—" He stopped, the words catching in his throat. "Because?" "Because I think I love you, Clara Whitmore. And God help me, that scares me more than any gunfight ever has." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she kissed him, fierce and desperate and over far too soon. "Don't die," she said. "If you die, I'll kill you myself." "Yes, ma'am." The rider's name was Marcus Stone. Elijah knew him by reputation. A methodical, efficient killer who never failed to bring in his bounty. They said he'd tracked a man across the Canadian border in the dead of winter, then dragged him back across 600 miles of frozen wilderness. They said he'd once waited 3 weeks in a tree for his target to step outside to piss. They said he never gave up. Stone reined in his horse at the edge of the clearing, studying the cabin with cold, calculating eyes. He was younger than Elijah, maybe 35, but there was nothing young about his gaze. "Cade," he said, "didn't expect to find you here." "Stone." Elijah kept his hand away from his gun, not threatening, not yet. "Long way from your usual hunting grounds." "Same as you, following the money." Stone's eyes flicked to the cabin. "She's in there, isn't she? Clara Whitmore, $5,000 dead or alive." "She is." "Then I guess we have a problem. Only one of us is walking away with that reward." "Maybe neither of us is." Stone's hand moved to rest on his holster, casual, like he was just getting comfortable. But Elijah knew that move. It was preparation. "That's a strange thing to say, Cade. Last I heard you never walked away from a bounty. Things change." "Do they?" Stone tilted his head, studying Elijah like a curiosity. "You've been here 2 weeks. I've been tracking her for 3 months. Watched her cross the territories, always just out of reach. Watched you find her trail and follow it. Watched you ride into this valley." His eyes narrowed. "Watched you stay. You've been watching me." I like to know my competition. And you're the best, Cade. Or you were. Stone's lip curled. But something happened here. You went soft. I can see it in the way you're standing, the way you're talking. You don't want to bring her in anymore. No, I don't. Then step aside. Let me do my job. I can't do that either. Stone sighed. A theatrical sound, like a teacher disappointed in a student. Then I guess we're going to have a problem. I guess we are. They faced each other across 20 feet of dusty ground. The sun was high and hot, casting harsh shadows. Somewhere in the cottonwoods, a crow called. "You're faster than me," Stone said conversationally. "Everyone knows that, but I've got an ace you don't know about." "What's that?" Stone smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I brought friends." They emerged from the tree line like ghosts. 4 men on horseback, rifles already leveled. Elijah recognized the tactic. Surround the enemy. Give them no way out. Then negotiate from a position of absolute strength. Stone had played this game before. 5 guns against 1, Stone said. "Those aren't great odds, Cade. Even for you." Elijah's mind raced through the options. Fight, and probably die. Surrender, and watch them take Clara. Run, and abandon everything he'd found here. None of them were acceptable. "What do you want, Stone?" "What I've always wanted. The bounty. Give her to me, and you can walk away. I'll even forget I saw you here. And if I refuse? Then we kill you first. Then we drag her out. Then we collect our $5,000. Stone shrugged. "Either way, I get paid. I'm just offering you a chance to live." The cabin door creaked open behind Elijah. He didn't turn, but he heard Clara's footsteps on the porch. "Don't," he said quietly. "Stay inside." "No." She came to stand beside him, the shotgun back in her hands. "If this is where it ends, I'm not hiding." Stone laughed. "Well, look at that. The murderess herself. You've caused me a lot of trouble, Mrs. Whitmore. 3 months of riding, 3 months of eating trail dust and sleeping on cold ground. You're going to make me a rich man." "I'm going to put 2 barrels of buckshot in your chest," Clara said calmly. "That's what I'm going to do." The big words for a woman with 4 children hiding in a root cellar. Clara's face went white. Stone saw it and smiled. "Oh yes. I know about them. The Hammond brats. Watched them from the ridge for days. Watched you play mother hen." His smile turned cruel. "Here's the thing, Mrs. Whitmore. I don't get paid for children. They're not worth anything to me. So after we deal with you and your pet bounty hunter here, I suppose we'll have to, dispose of them." "You touch those children, and I will end you," Clara hissed. "I will end everything you are. You'll be dead. You won't end anything." Elijah felt the world narrow to a single point of focus. The men, their guns, the angles, the distance. "Stone," he said quietly, "you shouldn't have threatened the children." "Excuse me?" "I said." Elijah's hand moved. The first shot took the man on the far left in the shoulder, spinning him from his saddle. The second and third hit the 2 men on the right before they could bring their rifles to bear. The 4th shot missed. Stone was already moving, diving from his horse, rolling behind a water trough. Clara's shotgun boomed. The 5th man caught the blast in the chest and went down. Then everything went silent. Elijah counted. 4 down. 3 dead or dying, 1 wounded. Stone still alive, hidden, dangerous. "Clara, get inside." "No." "Damn it, woman!" The shot came from behind the water trough. Elijah felt the bullet tear through his side, a burning, grinding pain that stole his breath. He dropped to one knee, his vision blurring. "Elijah!" Stone emerged from cover, his pistol still smoking. He walked toward them with the confident stride of a man who had won. See, that's your problem, Cade. You got too close. Started caring. A man who cares is a man who hesitates. He raised his gun, aiming at Clara. Time to collect my bounty. The shot came from behind them. Stone looked down at the red bloom spreading across his chest. He looked up at the cabin, where Sarah Hammond stood in the doorway, Elijah's Winchester still pressed against her shoulder. "You shouldn't have threatened us," she said. Her voice was steady. Her aim didn't waver. Stone fell. They buried him by the creek, in soil that would be soft come spring. The other men, the ones who survived, Elijah let them go with a warning. Spread the word that Clara Whitmore was dead. Tell anyone who asked that Marcus Stone killed her in the mountains and buried her where no one would find her. Whether they believed it didn't matter. What mattered was that for the first time in months, Clara had a chance. She found Elijah on the porch that evening, his side bandaged, his color slowly returning. She sat beside him without speaking. "Sarah saved our lives," he said finally. "I know. She's 10 years old, and she killed a man." "I know that too." Clara's voice was heavy. "I never wanted this for them. Any of this. None of us wanted this, but here we are." She leaned against him, carefully, mindful of his wound. "What happens now?" "Now?" Elijah looked out at the valley, at the cabin, the garden, the ring of cottonwoods that had sheltered them from the world. "Now we figure out how to live. Really live, not just survive. Is that possible? For people like us?" "I don't know. But I think—" He reached out and took her hand. "I think I'd like to find out." Clara's fingers tightened around his. "The children," she said. "They need stability, a home, a future. They have you. They need more than me. They need—" She hesitated. "They need a family." "Are you asking me something, Clara Whitmore?" She turned to face him, and in the dying light, her eyes were full of something he'd never expected to see. Not fear, not defiance, but hope. "I'm asking you to stay. Not because of the children, though they need you. Not because of Stone's men or whatever bounty hunters might come next." She took a breath. "I'm asking you to stay because I love you, Elijah Cade. Because somewhere between the death warrant and the showdown, you became the only person in the world I trust." "Clara, I know it's crazy. I know you had a life before this. Plans, dreams, that ranch in Montana. I'm not asking you to give that up. I'm just asking you to consider that maybe you could have those things here. With us." He was quiet for a long moment. Long enough that Clara began to pull away, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "I'm sorry. That was too much. Forget I said—" He kissed her. Gently, this time. Not the desperate kiss of two people who thought they were going to die, but the tender kiss of two people who had decided to live. "That ranch in Montana," he said when they finally broke apart. "I've been dreaming about it for 15 years. Quiet life, no more blood, no more dust, no more looking over my shoulder." "I understand." "No, you don't." He smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him. "I've been dreaming about it for 15 years. And in 2 weeks, you showed me something I never expected. A home doesn't have to be a place. It can be a person. It can be a family. Elijah. I'm staying, Clara. Not because you asked. Not because of the children." He cupped her face in his hands. "I'm staying because this is where I belong. Here. With you. With them." She laughed, a sound of pure, unguarded joy that she hadn't made in years. "You're sure? You're absolutely sure? Because once you're in, you're in. These children, they'll cling to you. They'll need you. You can't leave." "I don't want to leave." even knowing what I did, what I am. What you are is the bravest woman I've ever met. What you did is what any person with a soul would have done." He pulled her close. "Cornelius Ashford got what he deserved. And you. You deserve a chance to be happy. So do you. Then let's be happy together." Winter came to the valley like a quiet promise. The first snows fell in November, covering the world in white. The children adapted to the cold with the resilience of the young, building snow forts, staging snowball fights, learning to track rabbits across the frozen meadows. Elijah and Clara were married on Christmas Day. Sarah performed the ceremony. She'd found the words in Clara's old Bible and practiced them until she knew them by heart. Thomas served as ring-bearer, carrying the simple gold bands that Elijah had bought in secret during a supply run to the trading post. Emma scattered dried flower petals down the aisle, and Michael watched everything with wide, wondering eyes. There was no justice of the peace, no legal recognition, just a promise made in front of the fire, witnessed by 4 children who had already lost everything and found it again. "I, Elijah Cade, take you, Clara Whitmore, to be my wife. In good times and bad, in bounty and in scarcity," he smiled. "In running and in staying." Clara laughed through her tears. "I, Clara Whitmore, take you, Elijah Cade, to be my husband, in hiding and in truth, in fear and in hope." She squeezed his hands. "In the darkness we've left behind, and the light we're walking toward." Sarah closed the Bible with the solemnity of a child who understood more than she should. "By the power vested in me by this family, I now pronounce you married. You may kiss the bride." And he did. Spring brought new challenges. The garden needed expanding. The cabin needed repairs. The fence around the chicken coop had to be rebuilt after a wolf got in. But spring also brought something unexpected. A visitor. Elijah saw the rider coming from a mile away and had the Winchester in his hands before she crested the hill. But as she drew closer, he lowered the gun. She was a woman, middle-aged, well-dressed, riding side saddle on a chestnut mare. Not a bounty hunter, not a threat. She stopped at the edge of the clearing and surveyed the scene. The cabin, the garden, the children playing in the yard. "Is this the Whitmore place?" she called. Clara came to stand beside Elijah, wiping flour from her hands. "Who's asking?" The woman dismounted with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to long rides. "My name is Margaret Hammond. I'm looking for my grandchildren." The conversation that followed was long and difficult. Margaret Hammond had spent months searching for Sarah, Thomas, Emma, and Michael. She'd traced them from the massacre in Texas to the trading posts, from the trading posts to rumors of a woman and 4 children living in the Wyoming mountains. "Their father was my only son," she said, her voice rough with grief. "When I heard what happened, when I learned they might still be alive, I sold everything I had, the house, the land, everything. I had to find them." Clara and Elijah exchanged a look. This was what they had always feared, that someone would come to take the children away. "They're safe here," Clara said carefully. "They're happy. I'm sure they are." Margaret's eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "I'm not here to take them from you. I'm here to thank you, and to ask if I might be allowed to be part of their lives." Margaret stayed through the summer. She was different from what they expected. Not the stern, disapproving grandmother of Clara's fears, but a warm, practical woman who threw herself into the work of the cabin with enthusiasm. She taught Sarah to bake bread, the way her mother used to. She told Thomas stories about his father as a boy. She held Emma and Michael when they cried for parents they barely remembered. And she watched Clara and Elijah with knowing eyes. "You love them," she said to Clara one evening, when the children were asleep and the men were in the barn. "All of them, not just as duty, As family. They are my family. I know. Margaret smiled. I was worried when I came here. Worried that I'd find them with strangers, with people who saw them as burdens. But you, she shook her head. You saved their lives, and not just physically. You gave them a home, a future, parents. They still miss their real parents. They always will, but they've made room for new ones. That's not betrayal, that's survival. Margaret reached out and took Clara's hand. I'm not going to take them away from you. This is where they belong. But I would very much like to stay, to be part of this family you've built. Clara felt the tears coming and didn't try to stop them. Stay, she said. Please, stay as long as you want. Years passed. The cabin grew into a house, then into a small compound of buildings, a barn, a bunkhouse, a separate cottage for Margaret. The garden expanded into farmland. The chicken coop multiplied into a proper henhouse. Sarah grew into a fierce, capable young woman who could outshoot most men and outthink even more. She fell in love with a young rancher from the valley over and married him in the same spot where Clara and Elijah had wed. Thomas followed his passion for horses and became known throughout the territory as the best horse trainer in 3 counties. Emma developed a talent for healing and eventually traveled to Denver to study medicine. A journey that would have been impossible for a woman of her origins, if not for the confidence Clara had instilled in her. And Michael, the smallest, grew into a quiet, thoughtful man who eventually took over the family land and raised his own children in the house that Clara and Elijah had built. Clara's past never came calling again. Marcus Stone's men had spread the word, as promised. As far as the world knew, Clara Whitmore had died in the mountains, her body lost to the wilderness. Clara Cade, wife, mother, grandmother, lived on. Elijah died first, on a cool autumn morning when the aspens were turning gold. He was 67 years old, and he went peacefully, with Clara's hand in his and the sounds of his grandchildren playing in the yard. No regrets? Clara asked him in those final hours. Only one. His voice was faint but steady. That I didn't find you sooner. You found me when you were meant to. I was a bounty hunter. I was supposed to bring you in. You did. She smiled through her tears. You brought me in from the cold, from the running, from the loneliness. She kissed his forehead. You brought me home. He died with her name on his lips and a smile on his face. Clara lived another 12 years. She became the matriarch of a sprawling family, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who gathered at the compound for holidays, who asked her to tell them stories about the old days, who learned to shoot and ride and work the land, just as she had taught their parents. She never told them about Denver, about Cornelius Ashford, about the wanted poster that had once carried her face. That was the past. And the past was buried, along with the woman she used to be. On the last day of her life, Clara walked out to the porch, slowly, carefully, leaning on the cane that Sarah had carved for her, and looked out at the valley. The cottonwoods were budding. The snow was melting on the high peaks. Somewhere, a meadowlark was singing. She thought about the day she had ridden into this valley, alone and terrified and convinced that her life was over. She thought about Elijah, riding in after her, intent on bringing her back. She thought about the children she had found and the family they had become. She thought about redemption, about second chances, about the strange, wonderful way that life had of giving you exactly what you needed, even when you didn't know you needed it. Thank you, she whispered, to the valley, to the mountains, to whatever force had brought her here and let her stay. Then she closed her eyes and went to join her husband. They buried her beside Elijah, under the cottonwood tree where they had first kissed. The whole family gathered, Hammonds and Cades, united by blood and choice and love. Sarah, now in her 60s with grandchildren of her own, read from Clara's old Bible. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. They planted wildflowers on the grave. They told stories about Clara and Elijah, the woman who had fought for them, the man who had stayed for her, the family they had built together. And as the sun set over the valley, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose and purple, a breeze stirred the cottonwood leaves, carrying with it the scent of sage and something else. Something that smelled like hope.